Hello, my name is Stefan Rathert. I greet you from Kahramanmaraş, Sütçü İmam University in Turkey. In my presentation, I'm going to talk about a study which I conducted. And in this study, I was interested to find out to what extent local course books used in high school in Turkey serve as promoter of teaching for international communication. So the context is an EFL context, and the materials and activities in EFL context are of course important, but they are often perceived as culturally alienating. This is because the native speaker culture is shown to be superior to the learner's own culture as desirable, and very often learners suffer from interactions which they perceive inauthentic because they are unlikely to experience them. As Pinner says, in a rural village of China, how is it possible to authenticate a textbook in which people with British or American accents discuss which nightclub to visit? Well, is there a remedy? Yes, there is. An obvious solution is, of course, to relate English learning materials to the learner's environment and cultures, and to integrate interactions learners are more likely to experience. Tomlinson says, what learners need is rich, varied and extensive experience of interactions between non-native speakers of English from different parts of the world. So, what Tomlinson here refers to is, of course, the status of English as an international language in nearly all domains of life. And to this story belongs that English, as we all know, is more frequently spoken by speakers whose first language is not English than by native speakers. So English for that reason has become a status as the language for international communication, and this became manifest in different conceptualizations, notably the world Englishes, English as a lingua franca, English for international as an international language, and more recently global Englishes. What, despite of some difference that there are, what all these conceptualizations have in common is the appreciation that English is spoken in varieties by non-native speakers, that these varieties depict examples of valid language practices, and these practices cannot be devaluated by reference to native speakers' norms. So what does it tell us for the teaching of English as an international language? I cite Lopriore and Vettorel, who say, what is needed is an understanding of English as currently used by speakers in naturally occurring interactions within social interaction and multilingual environments as a way to inform the curriculum. So, and if this understanding informs the curriculum, then it will have hopefully an impact on the materials. So how can we integrate English as an international language or ELF components into materials? Obviously, by giving non-native speakers of English a voice in the materials, by implementing conflict-loaded content reflecting different worldviews, cultures, examples for translanguaging practices, instead of these sanitized texts promoting the native speaker bias. Very importantly, we need to, or we would like to see tasks that simulate interaction for international communication in course books. So what tourists do, what maybe business people do, what is done by learners who join academic exchange programs. And we would like to see communication strategy training that helps learners to survive in communication with speakers from different linguacultural backgrounds. So when we now have a quick look at course book evaluation studies, and this is a very, very selective collection of newer studies, we see that course books recognize the importance of ELF, EIL content, but these components are insufficiently integrated. There's sporadic consideration of tasks preparing for international communication, and there's no or insufficient match of materials with the learner's needs. This brings me to my study, because in my study I was going to find out something similar in 4 local course books used in Turkish high schools. And here you find all the information for our convention. I will refer to them as course book 9, 10, 11, 12. So these course books are approved by the Ministry of National Education. That is, they stick to the proficiency levels foreseen for each grade, and they have to stick to this formulation from the curriculum. First of all, English is seen as a lingua franca and international language used in today's global world. So, and my aim was to see, do the course books meet these criteria? In order to find out if they meet or not, I had to look at reading texts, and I identified linguacultural contexts. This is inner circle, outer circle, expanding circle, and the Turkish context, which would normally belong to the expanding circle, but since I examine Turkish course books, I wanted to keep it separately. Texts in which there's an intercultural comparison, or what also happened, that there is no context or no reference to a context, based on references to people that are topic of a reading text, or when people appear as writers, generators of the text, places, and other thematic content. To illustrate this, I had to, in the books I analyzed, there was a text about earthquakes, about rescue operations after earthquakes, and reference was given to New Zealand. So there was reference given to the inner circle, but still the text related to thematic content. Because the course books have different numbers of reading texts, I calculated the percentage of text displaying these linguacultural contexts. You will see it in a minute. A second point was I was going to look at tasks, because as I said a couple of minutes ago, tasks may simulate situations for international communication. So when we look at tasks in the meaning of task-based learning, we have these strict categories. A task is a work plan with main focus on meaning. There's a gap. Students use own linguistic and non-linguistic resources. And there's a clear outcome referring to communicative purposes. However, when I preliminary analyzed the course books, I saw that actually none of the tasks met these standards. So I applied a more tolerant framework that by Tomlinson, who says a task engages learners in communication to reach an outcome, and that goes beyond the practice of a linguistic feature. A task may be a simplified version of a real-world activity, or an activity, sometimes also called pedagogical task, designed for the classroom. And as assessment criteria, I was interested if these tasks consider scenarios exemplifying international communication and are different linguacultural backgrounds shown. So let me jump into the findings. Here you find the findings for reference to people, and what we can see that in all course books there is a reference to the inner circle, but the course book for grade 10 is a little bit an exception, because to a stronger extent people from the Turkish context are considered compared to the other course books. So there's a distribution, but it's not equal in all course books. Let's have a look. So here is an example from an English user from the Turkish context. When you have a quick look at the text, what if we changed the name of this person and the places and replaced him with somebody from Spain, Russia or Germany or wherever? The thing I want to say is, even though this text is related to somebody from the expanding circle, it is not very culturally loaded. The next example from the course book for the 11th grader shows a text in which two persons coming from the inner circle of English talk about their gap years plan. Now, this is without doubt an interesting topic and relevant for the student. But why not having, for example, one person from the inner circle and the second circle from the, for example, expanding circle, who tells the reader that he or she learns English because he or she wants to spend his gap year abroad, maybe not in an English-speaking country. So this person then would be a model for the learners. So let's have a look at the places dealt with in the reading text. Again, we can see that in all course books, the inner circle is represented, while the expanding circle is not represented in the course book for the 10th and 12th grades. And interestingly, the Turkish context is not shown in the course book for the 10th grades. What we can see that the book for the 9th grade less deals with places in the inner circle. However, we have to say that in as you can see, 6.7, no more than 6.7% of the reading texts, for example, in course book 9, there is appears a place that refers to the expanding circle. So here's an interesting case of a place that has no local reference. As you can see, it is called Our Town by a speaker who is not identified. We have some cues maybe. There's a market square and the Opera House and Castle Street. It may be the inner circle, but we cannot be sure. It is obvious that this text is only in the course book to deliver a grammar point. This is prepositions of place. It is an uninspiring text. Why not change it with a text in which, for example, a student in an exchange program is talking lively about his town, and the learners, the users of the course book, are assumed to visit this person. So here we have the linguacultural reference to thematic content. What we, again, all course books in some way refer to the inner circle, but we can see that especially the course book for the 12th graders refers to the Turkish context and to no context, which is expectable because in the 12th grader course book there are more academic texts which do not necessarily demand reference to a linguacultural place. Now, here we have an example from the 9th course book. The topic is celebrations. And as you can see, I mean, probably now you don't have enough time, but what we can see is that it is not related to a place. It's such a cultural sensitive topic, but it is not related to a place. Maybe to the Turkish context because the first person plural is used. And now when you look at the first sentence of the 4th paragraph, we love religious days and festivals. One claim of EIL aware teaching is to generate intercultural understanding tolerance. This text talks very authoritative about this topic, saying, we love religious days and festivals. So here we have another example, and I think a nice example from the course book 10. We have 5 speakers from all circles using writing in a forum about celebrities, festivals. So this is a counter example to the slide before. This is a true example of international communication, even if it is probably made up for the coursebook. So let me go to the tasks. Some general results. As I said before, no tasks actually meet Ellis and Shintani's criteria. There is tasks resort to PPP and role plays with cues provided, and there's a focus on presentations again and again. In these presentations, we have a consideration of the Turkish context and some activities related to intercultural awareness. But some activities, and I will show you an example, have an international setting, but it is unclear how they may contribute to the teaching of English for international communication. And here's the example. This is a role play, and the students have to play strangers at an airport, and then they have an exchange based on cue cards. And they are asked to give information about German people. And German people, of course, are punctual, cold, hardworking, disciplined, while Italian people are love talking in a loud voice or shouting. So again, is the aim raising intercultural awareness, or is the plan strengthening cultural stereotypes? I would like to finalize my presentation with a good example. Here, the students have to make a travel plan, and they are going to organize a 3-day vacation for their classmates. Just to make it a little more into the direction of international English as an international language, why not preparing a 3-day vacation for, again, exchange students who are going to visit the learner's class? So when we have a look, and due to time concerns, the look is very short, we saw in the course books analyzed that there are different linguacultural contexts considered to varying extent in the course book. So it's changed from course book to course book. Saying this, I think it is important that we need to make the point that, of course, for example, the inner circle and native speaker examples should be there. We saw superficial, uncritical representations of culture, and this is a severe problem. The tasks do not prepare for international communication. So, with an awareness of the limitations of my study, because I only looked at 2 components of course books, I didn't look at the language. The task for coursebook writers is to integrate, to more frequently and more systematic integrate materials that foster intercultural awareness and develop communicative strategies to successfully participate in international communication. So only giving examples of this culture and that culture may not be enough. So I have arrived at the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope to see you face to face in the conference. Goodbye.